Today we want to look at two word problems, and these are the kinds that we are asked to find the correct equation that would be used to solve this problem. The good news is we're not asked to solve the problem, just figure out what equation we would use. So let's start by reading it. Mr. Anderson had 185 pieces of wood. You have a picture of that in your head? 185 pieces of wood. That's a big pile. He sold 25 pieces of wood to his neighbor, so let's pause there. What do you think it means when he sold them? What happened to his pile of wood? So picture what would be happening. Some of that wood is gone now. Now think about what that means mathematically when something leaves. So we've got that. He stacked the rest of the wood into piles around his house. So he had this big pile of wood. He sold some of it. And then he took the rest of the wood and he stacked it into piles. Okay? Each pile of wood contained 40 pieces of wood. Okay, I can picture that. Which equation can be used to find P, the number of piles of wood Mr. Anderson made? So let's start with a picture of this. So let's start with, here's his pile of wood. And how much is in this pile? 185 pieces of wood. What happens next? He sold 25 pieces, so 25 pieces left. So what happened to this pile? It got smaller. So what equation would that look like? It would look like 185 minus these 25 pieces of wood that he sold. So we would have 185 minus 25. And what would that part tell us? That's right, that would tell us the rest of the wood that he stacked into piles. So he has this wood, and what did he do with what was left? He stacked it into piles of 40 pieces of wood each. Now, how do I show that mathematically? I'm taking this wood and I'm putting it into piles, and they all have the same number of pieces of wood in them. So if we're talking about equal groups, what operations are we talking about? We're talking about separating this into equal groups. We knew the total, we took some away, so now we still have a new total that he's stacking into equal groups. That would be division. So we would then take what was left and divide it into stacks of 40. And we're told that this equation finds P, the number of piles of wood he has. So now knowing this, let's look at our answer choices. 185 plus 25 plus 40. Let's think about why this equation couldn't work. If we know our equation is correct, what's wrong with this one? Let's look right here. 185 plus 25. Why can't that work? Well, he sold 25 pieces of wood. So if we're adding it, it means we got more. Did he get more wood? He did not. So we know that won't work. And the good news is we can look right down here at H. It does the same thing. It adds the 25 pieces of wood to it. So we know F won't work because he didn't get more wood, and H won't work for the same reason. Now, let's look at the next equation and see. We're left with G and J. Do these start at the beginning of the equation? Do they match ours? 185 minus 25. They both have that part of the equation. But now let's figure out what's different about them. One says minus 40 and one says divided by 40. How do we know our divided by 40 is correct? Why would we want to divide by 40 instead of subtract 40? Well, we need to divide by 40 because it says each pile contained 40 pieces of wood. He's making equal groups. He didn't just take one pile of 40 away. He put all of the rest of the wood. He stacked all the rest of the wood into piles. So that means he's dividing the rest of the wood into equal groups of 40 pieces of wood each. So we know J can't be it because this would just be subtracting away one set of 40 pieces of wood. And we want to put all of the wood into stacks of 40. So we know that J matches this word problem. 185 pieces of wood minus 25 that he gave away, and then divided up into piles of 40 pieces of wood each. Let's look at one more. Here we have a table that we have to figure out some missing information. The table shows the number of hats made at a factory during 3 weeks in February. The number of hats made in week 4 is represented by N. So that's the missing piece of information that we're being asked to figure out. The total number of hats made in February was 2,148,431. Which equation represents this situation? So let's just ignore these equations for a minute and think about what we have. We have 4 weeks that they've been making hats, and we know the total. This looks like a strip diagram to me. So I'm going to draw a big strip diagram down here and see how we could put the information in to help us figure this out. We know the total we're given in February is 2,148,431. And then we have 4 months. So I'm going to divide this up into 4 parts. Month 1, 562,937. Week 2, 607,822. Week 3, 492,375. And then, of course, week 4 is this missing piece that we don't know. So if we didn't have these equations to look at, your multiple choice equations, what would you do to figure out this missing piece of information? Well, we know that if we add all of these together, it has to equal 2,148,431. That's how an equation works. That's how a strip diagram works. We add all the parts, and that equals the total. So let's see if we have an equation that does just that. Each of them start with the total, so they're all the same here. This part doesn't help us because they're all the same. Now let's look at the next part. Each of them have in parentheses the 3 weeks that we already know added together. So this part is all the same, so that won't help us. So look at what's different. Right here is what's different. The operation is different. F says we're adding N. Remember, here's N. G says we're subtracting N. H says we're multiplying by N. And J says we're dividing by N. So what did we think was happening? We feel like, because we know how a strip diagram works, part plus part plus part plus part equals whole, that we would add together 562,937 plus 607,822 plus 492,375 plus whatever the missing part is has to equal 2,148,431. So if we look at our answer choices, we see that F matches our strip diagram. So why can't it be G? Well, to find the total, would I add up the 3 weeks and then subtract the missing part if I want the total of all 4 weeks? I can't subtract away 1 week. That would not give me the total. Would I multiply by week 4? If I multiplied weeks 1, 2, and 3 by the missing amount, is that going to give me the total number of hats they made? No, that won't work either. Am I trying to divide them into equal groups? Am I trying to add up weeks 1, 2, and 3 and then divide them into equal groups by dividing by N? That's not what our problem asked either. So our problem asked us, using this strip diagram, add all 4 parts together, and that would equal our total, which gives us F.